Hello friends, in the talk today we'll talk about Hindi cinema and Yash Chopra. In the earlier lectures on Yash Chopra we talked about the kind of cinema which he has made, that how he began his journey in terms of films in 1950s, and thereafter he became so successful with the starting of the Yash Raj banner, and how Yash Raj banner was able to make not only relevant films, but at the same time how these films they were able to enthrall the audience at different points of time. And the way Yash Chopra operated in the film industry, in that sense, not only as a director but he also produced a number of films, and how he was in a way given some kinds of awards for the kind of contribution which he made to the Hindi cinema. And we have seen that the way the themes on which Yash Chopra worked, how they dealt with the complex human relationships, and those kinds of relationships they reflected some kind of an emotion which could be seen in films of Yash Chopra. And in the initial phase when he started his journey, how he also dealt with the theme of partition of India in the initial films which were made by him, Dhool Ka Phool and Dharmputra. And thereafter we find that in 1970s how his association with Amitabh Bachchan, when he made the film Diwar, it became quite successful, and thereafter he also made Kabhi Kabhi and Trishul with him. And in his second innings, which began in around 2000 when Mohabbatein was made, Yash Chopra was also instrumental in his close association with Amitabh Bachchan. So we have seen that how Yash Chopra over a period of time made that kind of a cinema which was quite relevant from the point of view of the contemporary times, and many a times his films they were far ahead in terms of the treatment which was being given to them, apart from the themes as well. So we talked about how Rachel Dwyer has written a book on Yash Chopra, and then Gulzar et al., the encyclopedia of Hindi cinema has been will be quite relevant from the point of view in terms of understanding the films of Yash Chopra, apart from the various articles which could be seen in the various newspapers, and most importantly the films which will serve as an important source of understanding the cinema of Yash Chopra. In the last lecture, when we were talking about Yash Chopra, we were discussing one of his films called Kabhi Kabhi, and how Kabhi Kabhi has been very, very important from the framework of how Amitabh Bachchan is being portrayed in this film, and how Amitabh Bachchan is being shown as a romantic poet who loses his love. So this was some sort of a departure from his earlier angry young man roles in Janjeer and Diwar. And when you see that how the film music plays an important role, and this film also had popular songs as well as music in this film, and the role of the music in terms of the success of the films is also being very, very relevant, and how we find that songs in India are there for every occasion, whether it is marriage or even death. We will have songs for every occasion, and music again is very integral, not only the classical or the Carnatic music but the folk music as well, which is there in various kinds of instruments, and these instruments are also relevant in different parts of India. The different kinds of musical instruments they are prominent, apart from the ones in which one can take a lot of training as well. So we find that how Yash Chopra was in a way able to integrate the storyline with the music and the songs, and the kind of cinematography which we find in his films, where the scenic beauty could also be seen. Apart from that, we also see that another popular film which was made with Sanjeev Kumar and Amitabh Bachchan was Trishul. And again, the idea of legitimacy and illegitimacy could also be seen in this film as well, where Sanjeev Kumar gives up his first love, Wahida Rehman, to marry a wealthy heiress, and she delivers the illegitimate son. The role played by Amitabh Bachchan is being raised by her alone, and how Amitabh Bachchan takes the vengeance by destroying his father's business and family relations. So we find that the issue of legitimacy and illegitimacy was a recurrent theme in the film of Yash Chopra, and how he was able to create the kind of characters which are illegitimate in nature from the point of view of the society, but at the same time the kind of strength these characters had, and how they were able to in a way fight with the society or to take on the society because they had that kind of a strength, was being reflected time and again by Yash Chopra in his films. And we see that how the complex web of relationships was also being evident in this film, where how Amitabh's half siblings, role played by Poonam Dhillon and Shashi Kapoor, they are also in a way caught in the crossfire of Amitabh's revenge, and Amitabh is not only seeking revenge from his father, illegitimate father in that sense, but he is also seeking revenge from his half siblings as well. So we find that finally in the climax scene, Sanjeev Kumar sacrifices himself to save Amitabh Bachchan, so that some kind of a relationship in a way is being reflected in the climax scene, and that how he realizes, Sanjeev Kumar realizes that he had committed some kind of a fault, and because of his guilt which was there in him, he is ready now to sacrifice himself. Earlier he has been shown to be a selfish person, and we find this as I have told you earlier as well, that this issue of legitimacy and illegitimacy is time and again reflected in the films of Yash Chopra. Then thereafter we also see that he was also in a way took up a number of contemporary events as well, where he in a way tries to show the poor condition of the workers in the mines, and for that he made a film called Kala Patthar in 1979, which was based on the Chasnala mining disaster. So this kind of an issue where ill-equipped workers are working in these kinds of mines, and the people, those who are benefiting from this kind of ill equipment which is not being given to them because they are saving money, and the availability of the cheap labor is one of the concerns which has been shown in the film. And we find that how the antagonist in the film is making life miserable or difficult for the coal miners, those who are working, and when these people, they are denied all sorts of equipment, and they are not even given the sufficient medical supplies, and their working conditions, they lack a lot of facilities which are to be given to them, which are general in nature. But we find that because of the kind of nexus which is between the mafia as well as the law enforcement agencies, we find that the people, those who are engaged in such kind of industries, they are not being given their due, and many a times all of them, they suffer because of the kind of apathy which is being reflected by the law enforcement agencies. So we see that how the characters or the heroes, they have to emerge out of them, and someone has to take the lead from among them to fight for the kind of justice which they have to seek for themselves. And in this film, Shashi Kapoor, Shatrughan Sinha and Amitabh, they play that kind of a role, that they have to fight for the kind of justice which they are seeking, not only for themselves but also for the others, those who are in the similar kind of a situation. And when the water, they floods the mines, endangering the lives of hundreds of workers, then they are ready to fight for their rights. So apart from the contemporary themes, we also find that some of the films which were made by Yash Chopra, they were also far ahead in terms of the kind of ideas which were being reflected in these films, and Silsila is one of them, which was made in 1981 with Amitabh Bachchan, Jaya Bachchan, Sanjeev Kumar, Rekha and Shashi Kapoor. And in this, if we go by the story, that how Amitabh marries Jaya Bachchan to save her honor, as she was carrying the child of his deceased brother, played by Shashi Kapoor. Again, the question of legitimacy and illegitimacy is being talked about in this film, that how Amitabh is ready to sacrifice his own love with Rekha, and is ready to save the honor of another woman who was to deliver the child of his brother. So this idea of legitimacy, he is also trying to convey the question of abandonment as well, that how Amitabh Bachchan abandons Rekha and Shashi Kapoor abandons Jaya Bhaduri through death, that how they could not be reunited in the life. And when Shashi Kapoor dies in an accident, so in a way he is abandoning Jaya Bhaduri through death. And we also see that how the rekindling of love between Amitabh and Rekha takes place when they meet later in life, and both of them, they have this kind of a familial responsibility as well. But how the love transcends this familial responsibility, and the question of ethics and the questions of morality, they are also in a way being talked about. And this film was made in 1980s, but when we try to in a way situate such kind of films in present times after around more than 40 years, and how we have seen that society has changed over time, over a period of time, and how the ideas of individual bliss, how the ideas of remaining in the present times, they are being talked about by the generations which are there, whether you call them Generation X, Generation Y, Generation Z. So all these generations which are thinking in more contemporary times. So whether they have any kinds of ideas with regard to the issue of ethics or idealism, or this some kind of a balance which has to be created between the love and the familial responsibility, they are also being shown in many of the films which are being made in the recent times. So it also in a way raises the question regarding the institution of marriage, that whether it is some sort of a social contract, or whether it is some sort of a religious sacrament which cannot be dissolved, or whether there are any kind of limits which are there in a marriage which have to be in a way followed. So Silsila did basically some kind of an average business in those times, and Tejaswini Ganti quotes Pamela Chopra, who is the wife of director Yash Chopra, that how the marriage is a very, very sacred institution in India. And when the director created sympathy for the two lovers who were willing to go outside their marriage and continue their love affair, he did not carry the audience with him. So this is an idea which is a very important idea in the context of the marriage in India. And 1980s in a way carried that idea very religiously, and that is how we say that this particular film was ahead of its times. But when we try to in a way situate the film in later times, that how Silsila, though being not very successful from the box office point of view in those times, but has seen to be or considered to be some sort of a classic in the later times as well. And we also find that how the film ends with a song depicting that how both of them, they are living happily in marriage, and the end title saying that love is faith and faith is forever. And we also find that one of the most popular songs, Rang Barse Bhige Chunarwali, was also in this form, which is quite popular during the times of Holi, that how the festivals they are also being shown in the films. Not only Holi, Diwali and so many other festivals, they are also being reflected in so many or portrayed in many of the films which have been made in the later times. And how Yash Chopra wanted to cast Parveen Babi and Smita Patil opposite Bachchan, but chose to cast Rekha and Jaya Bhaduri finally. So how the casting was also very, very important, and how casting definitely played an important role in terms of conveying the kind of emotions which are there in a film. So we also see that in the later times how Yash Chopra made some other films as well, and many of them they many times were not all that successful. And if we see a film called Mashal, starring Dilip Kumar, Anil Kapoor, and how a newspaper is being run by Dilip Kumar to expose the corrupt. And finally, he himself becomes mafia when his wife dies. And Anil Kapoor, who is an orphan, who is raised by Dilip Kumar, confronts him in the film. And so this film basically talks about the journalistic values, that how the people, those who are playing the role of torch bearers, or some kind of a conscience to the society in the framework of their journalism which they are doing, and the values which are associated with journalism, and how this kind of a corruption which is there in the society also changes them in the context. We also find that how many of the films which were made by Chopra during 80s, they were not all that successful, and when he turned to the genre of the romantic musical with the film called Chandni, and this film had all the hallmarks of what could to be known as Yash Chopra style. It was heroine oriented, romantic, emotional, depicting the lifestyle of the elite with melodic music which was used in the songs which were picturized in the foreign locations. So we find that this film became quite successful, and from the box office or from the commercial point of view. And Yash Chopra style, which was in a way considered to be a romantic and an emotional style, where you had some kind of a melodic music, and how these songs they were shot on the foreign locations, that could be seen in this particular film. And this film was not the first time that Chopra shot in Switzerland, but he had shot this in earlier times as well. But the extensive scenes which were shot there made it a popular tourist destinations for Indians. And how this film, when it was made, we find that a number of films which were dealing with violence, they were being made at that point of time. So this kind of a genre of a love story at that point of time again was in a way experimented by Yash Chopra, who was ready to take all sorts of risks in the context of his own idea of filmmaking. And thereafter he also made we also find that this kind of a film which was made by him. We also see that in this film how Rishi Kapoor is being paralyzed in an accident, and he deliberately insults Sridevi, so she leaves him. And finally when she moves out and gets involved with Vinod Khanna, and in the end climax scene we find that how both of them they reunite, and sacrifice is being made by Vinod Khanna in the film. So this idea of making the romantic cinema by Yash Chopra continues, and thereafter when he made a film called Lamhe in 1991, which was shot in Rajasthan as well as London, and how this film basically is trying to convey a story that how Anil Kapoor's love for Sridevi, who dies, remains, and he remains unmarried as well, and how in a double role, the role played by Sridevi again, daughter Sridevi is in love with Anil Kapoor in the film. And we find that this film was a commercial failure in India, that how audience could not relate to the theme, and how Times of India reported that it was a tale of love transcending the boundaries of time and space. So this idea which was trying to convey that Yash Chopra was thinking ahead of the times in which he was making his films, and many times we find that this kind of an idea was not accepted by the society, that many times his films they did not get the audience. But when you try to see these films in later times, then one is in a way able to relate to these kinds of themes because of the changing situation and the changing times. And many of the filmmakers, we find that their films they did not become successful from the box office point of view when they were being made, but in the later times they were considered to be classics, And so similar is the case in some of the films which did not become popular in those times, that how these films, they have been seen and re-seen by the audience in the later times. And we also find that how the importance of music and the dance in this film, where the folk dance number Morni Baga Mein by Sridevi in this film became quite popular. And we find that how Rachel Dwyer, she has talked about that how Yash Chopra's own favorite film Lamhe 1991 divided the audience on a class basis. It was hugely popular with metropolitan elites in the overseas market, which allowed it to break even, but it had a poor box office response, largely lower class, especially the repeat audience, because of its supposed incest theme. So we find that this theme of incest, which was in a way being depicted in the film, but this Rachel Dwyer basically sees that how people, they got divided on the class lines, and in the metropolitan markets we find that this film was able to do well even in the overseas markets as well. And the lower class, they could not relate to this kind of an idea or theme. So it has been in a way analyzed by Rachel Dwyer in this context. And we also see that there was a film called Dar, which was made in 1993, and Shah Rukh Khan is being shown as an obsessive lover in Bazigar and Dar, both of them. And we find that when such kind of portrayals they were being made, how people, they could also relate to such kind of portrayals, that how when an obsessive person is stalking some women, then they feel fearful because of such kind of stalking. And many times we newspapers, they also report that how these kinds of obsessive lovers, they have created some kind of a crime with these women. Many times they have not only murdered them, but in a way tried to create that kind of a situation which is fearful for these women. And how such kind of obsession at many times have put women at jeopardy. And Gulzar's et al. Encyclopedia of Hindi Cinema talks about that how Shah Rukh Khan defied the image of the conventional hero in both these films and created his own version of the revisionist hero or the anti-hero. And so thus such kind of a portrayal of an anti-hero became quite popular in the 1990s. And the shades of grey, which were not being shown in the earlier times in the context of the hero, they were seen during this particular period. We also see that the idea of romance or love was quite integral to the films which were made by Yash Chopra. And film again, Dil To Pagal Hai, made in 1997, was based on the power of love and how people, they are made for each other. The idea was in a way reflected in this film, and how dance is an integral aspect of this particular film as well. And we also see that the idea of sacrifice was also being shown, that how the parents of Akshay Kumar who brought up Madhuri Dixit in the film. So we see that how Yash Chopra was in a way able to combine all these kinds of aspects in the films which were made by him during this period. And he also talks about that the kind of violence, the kind of conflict which is there between India and Pakistan, it was reflected in a film called Veer Zara in 2004, and how the sympathetic portrayal of love across the borders is being shown, and the idea of love and brotherhood is being promoted by the film in this particular film. That how a pilot who goes to the Pakistan side and is being imprisoned there, and an idealistic Pakistani lawyer who paves the way for this person to come back to India. And this also in a way talks about women's empowerment in Pakistan. And we also see that how some of the films which were being in a way produced by Yash Chopra, like Dilwale Dulhaniya Le Jayenge, they also in a way promoted the consumerist culture and some of the regressive rituals like Karwa Chauth, and it was one of the films which made it quite popular. And so this in a way talks about the position of women in the society. and how Yash Raj Films also produced a number of films like Hum Tum, Dhoom 3, all of them, and they talk about in the framework of the brand placement, advertising and merchandising. So all these kinds of aspects, they are also being discussed. And his last film Jab Tak Hai Jahan was made in 2012, which is again a romantic drama dealing with love and sacrifice. Again, the facets of love, they have been talked about, and how Yash Chopra cinema in a way adapted itself to the changing times, and how Yash Raj banner in a way collaborated with foreign technicians, and how new kinds of production norms and they were being designed, and in a way sharing of the talent pool also took place. So with this, I'd like to end the discussion. Thank you very much.